Best way I can describe it, it was like I was at the bottom of a pit, a deep, dark pit, and I couldn't get out. And I thought again of what Ebby had to say, and again my mind was set against it. But for one brief moment, one of those moments that was mentioned in my introduction, for one brief moment my pride left me, because I found myself, my hands outstretched like I used to do when I was a little kid. I found myself crying out, if there is a God, let him show himself to me right now. I will do anything. Anything. The room I was in lit up in an intense white light, and I was caught up in an ecstasy that words can't describe. In my mind's eye, it was like I was on a mountaintop, and a wind, not of air, but of spirit, flowed through my body. And it burst upon me that I was free, that I was a free man. The obsession for alcohol left me. That had so crowded my mind, it left me. Eventually, the light and the ecstasy subsided, and now I found myself back in that hospital and back in that bed, but in a different state of consciousness, surrounded by a presence of pure, absolute joy. And I realized that everything that I had ever done in my life, good, bad, or indifferent, or everything that my fellow travelers on the planet had done in their lives, good, bad, or indifferent, why, it was okay. Everything was going to be okay. And that I was a part of only a tiny part of a universe that was ruled in justice and love by a loving, compassionate, personal God. And that was okay too. And all I could say was, so this is the God of the preachers. This is what they've been talking about all these years. And I lay there. It was beautiful. Lasted maybe 8, 10 minutes. I'm not sure. But I've got one of these inquiring, rational minds, and from the back of it I began to get the realization that I was undergoing a profound hallucination. That this was the slide into insanity that preceded alcohol psychosis, a wet brain. I was dying. And it frightened me, and I went and I got the nurse and I asked her to get the doctor, and she could see from my anxiety that I needed attention. She went and she woke the kind man, and he came to my room, and I described to him what I've just described to you. Finally, where the courage came from, I don't know, but I said, Doc, am I crazy? Is this the end? And he took an awfully long time, but finally said, no, my boy. He said, you're not crazy. I've never witnessed what you've described, but I have read about it in books. And I do know that it sobers up drunks. And I can tell you this, it's all you got. I saw you a couple of hours ago, and I wouldn't give you a tinker's damn for your life, but I can see you've changed. And you better hang on to it, but you're not crazy. And he left, and I slept like a baby. And the following morning, after a wonderful night's rest, Ebby came, visited me, and I told him what had happened. He said, I'll be right back. And he left, and within the hour he came back, but this time he brought a book with him, the book by Dr. James, William James, the Harvard psychologist, called The Variety of Religious Experiences. He said, here, Bill, read this. You'll find what happened to you last night in this book. It was the toughest book I ever read in my life, but indeed I found in that the cash value, the scientific evidence what had happened to me the night before. I was still a skeptic, but I found in that what had happened to me. This doctor described countless numbers of people that undergo these sudden, profound, illuminating experiences that alter the course of their lives. Conversion experiences, whether it's a bright light, voices, out-of-body experience, near death, whatever it is, people undergo this conversion. 1 minute they're caught up in the grip of some obsession and it changes their life, and they head back in the other direction, in a better, more profitable, more spiritual direction. But then the doctor continued, though, and he described a more common experience, which he called the educational variety, which was gradual, that people undergo the same conversion, but over a period of time, usually in fellowship, in community, in activities with other people. They undergo the same change in their personality. Whatever obsession they have, they lose, and they go in the other direction. Whether it's sudden or gradual, we all of us have one common denominator, before anything can begin, we needs must be in a state of calamity. Our lives have to be unmanageable. We have to be powerless over that obsession. And that's what had happened to me. Gee whiz, son of a gun. And then typically, as an alcoholic, I said, but why me? Why me? I had done nothing to deserve a break like this. Why was this message by my friend Ebby to set up a series of events that would proceed in this gift out of the blue for me? And that's what I came with an analogy that's hopefully going to last me the rest of my life, and it's very simple. And I hope you can identify with it. My drinking had so isolated me from the rest of mankind that I likened it to being in a cave of loneliness and self-isolation. And family, friends, and my wife, my dear wife, would often stand outside the mouth of the cave and say, hey, Bill, come out. Come out of there. Don't be there. Get out. And I couldn't get out. Try as much as I could not get out. And then one day, my friend Ebby showed up. But having been a captive in a similar cave, he didn't stand outside of mine. He entered mine. He could, from recent memory, he knew the way. He entered my loneliness, my isolation, took me by the hand, and led me out. One ex-cave dweller helping another, one alcoholic helping another to get out of that isolation. When I realized that, I knew that's what I wanted to do the rest of my life, help cave dwellers, help alcoholics get out of their caves and addictions. I left the hospital, joined the Oxford group, and for the next 6 months, I talked to thousands of them all over New York, trying to help them. And it got to the point when they saw me coming, they ran the other way. I couldn't help a soul. See, I was convinced that if you're going to get sober, you had to be on top of a mountain with a bright light and the wind going through you, not of air, but of spirit. They used to call it my hot flash. They would go like this when I told the story. One guy even dared to ask me what I was drinking the day I had my hot flash. I said, what do you mean? He said, I never want to touch that stuff as long as I live. If that can do that to you, I don't want any part of it. I couldn't sober up a soul. Finally, in desperation, I went back to see Silky. I said, Doc, how come Ebby can help me and I can't help anybody else? And he said, I've got one piece of advice. He said, I've listened to you when you talk to some of our patients, the charity cases. We'd never turn you loose on a paying customer. He said, but I've overheard you. I've got one piece of advice. I said, what's that? He said, lay off the God business. I said, you got to be kidding. He said, no. He said, don't talk God to a drunk. Talk drunk to a drunk. Talk about lying, stealing, cheating. Talk about alcoholism. Talk about you. Make the connection. Tell them who you are and what happened to you. You knew Ebby. These fellas don't know you. Tell them who you are, what happened. Make the connection first, then give them the spiritual angle. I started to do it. They stopped running away, but nobody got sober. Finally, after another month of trying it, friends of ours, good friends, came up to me and said, hey, Bill, when are you going to get back to work, get your wife out of that damn department store? Give up this drunk business. So I started to hang out in some of the brokerage houses, like McCorba, waiting for an opportunity to come along. And finally, I landed a deal going down in Akron, Ohio. And I cut myself in for a piece of the action. Akron in 1935 was a city divided into itself. Headquarters of the three major tire companies in the United States, well, in the world, Firestone, Goodyear, and Goodrich. It was my intention with a group of investors to take over a small machine company that was doing business with all three companies, a rare plum. We were going to do it by proxy, by a stock battle, but it didn't work out. The deal floundered and finally collapsed. And my investors, my friends, packed up and went back to New York after a couple of weeks of very hard work. But I asked to stay behind, to see if I could salvage something, to see if possibly there was some malfeasance or misfeasance during the whole negotiations, and if there was and the other people were guilty, we could press charges and recover our expenses, maybe even some profit. So my pal said, you want to stay behind? Go ahead. My bill at the Mayflower Hotel where we were staying had been paid forward, so they say, stay, won't cost anything. That's how I found myself the day before Mother's Day, 1930.